Hello everyone, I'm back and today we are building a Scottish Blackhouse. Now this is a build that a lovely subscriber suggested for me, and I'd actually never heard of these type of builds before, dwellings before. So I actually went away and had a little look online, had a little read, and it was quite interesting actually, because it's something which, well, it's a dwelling which looks really, really old, and I mean, there are some very, very old ones, but it's actually not as old as perhaps it might appear. So a lot of them were built in the 1800s, and they were sort of you'll find a lot of them in the Scottish Highlands and some of the Isles, places where there's very extreme weather, so, or very cold, and can be very windy, very wet. So they would obviously need to live somewhere that could withstand that kind of climate. So they built these sort of just like one story. I don't really know like what to call it. I'm trying to think of like the best term for like just the sort of basic kind of shape of it, if you know what I mean. But it's just a very simple little dwelling, one story, and all made of stone with like a thatched roof. And there were sort of different variations that I found online. Sort of obviously there'd be like different ones built in different times. And when I started building, I wasn't really sure what kind of style we were going to go for, sort of how old we were going to go, basically. And you'll see to start with, I do have a chimney on it. Now, the sort of original ones don't actually have chimneys, and you'll see that partway through I do decide to take it off because I think, do you know what, if we're going to do it, let's do the real deal. So I do take that one off, because they didn't actually have chimneys, and instead they had the sort of stove, as it was, so just kind of would be in the middle of the black house, and that would warm the whole of the building basically. And just the shape of it, with the way they have the thatched roof, all the heat would stay inside, because obviously it's like very, very thick stone as well on the walls. So that's kind of how they would do it, rather than having a chimney, because obviously if you do the chimney, you lose a lot of the smoke and things. So yeah. And I mean, I do always feel a little bit nervous as well. It's exciting and interesting building something that perhaps isn't as familiar to you, and building something that's a bit different. So you're sort of doing, using different objects and using different like styles and things like that. But it's also, I do get a little bit nervous building things which aren't as familiar to me, because obviously I want to do it as it should be, or as best as I can as it should be. I don't want to do something which is like really obviously wouldn't be like that, if you see what I mean. So I really, really hope that it's how you would like, or it works. So if anyone out there has seen one of these in real life, I hope it at least gives that kind of vibe. It gives that kind of style. That's what we're hoping for. But yeah, so it's really nice actually to do a build that one of you suggested. I think it's nice to be able to do something like that. And I don't talk about it very often on my channel, but I honestly, like, it's so, so lovely, all the comments you leave and like the feedback you have on my build. So it's really nice actually to be able to do one that you want to see as well, if you see what I mean. So yeah, I really hope you like it. And definitely, like, if anyone has any suggestions, feel free to put them in the comments, and I'll see if I can do it, because it's a nice little challenge, I have to say. But yeah, it's just so lovely, like I say, to read all your messages, because when I first started doing YouTube, I just was doing it, I don't know, for just a bit of me time, just doing something different. That is something that I do, if that makes sense. And yeah, I mean, it amazes me when I get one view. So like the fact that, like one person would watch my video sort of like blows my mind a little bit. So it's so lovely to see you guys interact with them and things, and yeah, and just seeing like the familiar names. I do notice it all, like all you guys who follow along to a lot of the videos and things. Like, it's honestly, it's so lovely. So yeah, just a big thank you as well, to be honest. It's a big thank you. Because honestly, it's just, I mean, I love doing it anyway. Like, it's something I've really, really enjoyed doing this. And it's just like even nicer when, you know, other people enjoy it too. So yeah. So any other things, if you want me to give it a go, we can try it. We'll see how this one goes first. If this is a flop, then there we are. But I did actually really enjoy it. I really enjoyed sort of setting the like scene, as it were. So we're building again in Henford-on-Bagley on quite a big lot, actually, even though the build itself is quite small. I really wanted to put it in the right environment, because I felt like just sort of building one on its own, it looked a bit lonely, the Black House. So I really wanted to really try and create the environment that I feel like it would be in. And so yeah, I used quite a big lot to do that. And reading about them as well online, something really interesting actually about them is that these dwellings were actually shared, so by humans and animals. So the animals would actually live inside with them. So like one half would be with the animals and the other half would be for the people. So I do, when we get onto the inside, you'll see I do make half of it as if it were for animals to live in. So I felt, because obviously there would be animals and things, I wanted it to kind of be a little bit of a farm. So you'll see in the back, I have a sort of area that will be made out to have, you know, like a sort of little farm area. So where you grow some plants, have a few animals. And then obviously this is the main Black House here. And then I also made a little outer building, another outer building, again, because I just felt like it was a bit lonely on its own, which would be probably more modernly built. I say modernly, I'm not talking about now, but like still old, don't get me wrong, but more modern than the original Black House it's by. And it's perhaps something that the owners built at some point, obviously much later than when their original home was built. It's just a sort of like store cupboard type thing, really. So yeah, it's nothing like fancy. There's some things stored in there, and also it's good for a bit of gameplay. I've put some like gameplay items in there as well. So that's what that little building is. And then I also actually put the toilet outside. So there is a bath on the inside, but I make a little outer toilet because I've figured as well, I felt like the toilet would have its own little house outside. I could be wrong, but I'm just thinking of older buildings, they tended to have toilets outside. So yeah, so you'll see that appear at some point as well. But yeah, and the other thing actually that when I was building it, I really felt like worked for this kind of build is I wanted to make it off the grid, because this is like definitely somewhere that would be off the grid. So yeah, so obviously it means using a few kind of different types of items on the inside when we get into the inside to obviously keep it off the grid. And I mean, you don't have to keep it off the grid. Obviously you can do what you want with it. You can make it all nice inside, all modern, all fancy. Do whatever you want. But I just really felt like it was giving me off the grid vibe. So that's what we did. And it adds a bit of a challenge, right? It makes it a bit more interesting to play, not just like a normal house, you know? And I figured with all that water and having a farm, it just really lended itself to, I like the idea of them like having their chickens and collecting their eggs and then using the water that's like in this kind of like, call it a river or a stream that kind of runs past their house. Yeah, I enjoyed that, I did. But yeah, like I say, you could do anything with this build, and actually looking at it now, it would be quite a cool build. Like I say, I do keep it very traditional, but it would be quite a cool build to renovate into the interior being like modern. So maybe someone's renovated it to live in it now, more obviously in the times, if that makes sense. So it's not as like how it would have been many years ago. Yeah, or even to rent out, although I feel like that's kind of a bit, you know, somewhere like traditional like this, you kind of want to keep it to yourself, if you know what I mean, like rather than like letting other people rent it, if you know. But yeah, so you could really do lots of different things with it. And I did also contemplate when I first started building, making it like a museum, because obviously it is something old that, I mean, I don't know how many people still actually live in these today, compared to obviously they would have done. I saw online that there are some obviously that have been converted into a museum, somewhere you can go and visit, and they're obviously set up how they would have been inside many years ago, so you can kind of like see what it would have been like. So yeah, I did think about doing that, but I thought for The Sims, I thought it'd be quite fun, different way of playing, because obviously a lot of, you know, houses and things on The Sims are just sort of like as we know it now, if you know what I mean. So it is always fun to do something that's a little bit different, a bit interesting for gameplay. So yeah, I thought let's just do it like that. And this is, I mean, you can probably already tell because we're already like quite a long way through the video and we're still outside, but this is a very exterior heavy build. I spent a long time on the outside compared to the inside, which is, I mean, that is standard Isambardy style, let's be real. It's what most of my builds are. But this one especially is very outside heavy, and I just really wanted it to look, the landscape around it just really, I wanted it to feel like where it would be. I don't know, it get like making the grass duller, and that's the main thing, is that you'll see I chopped and changed a lot of the plants and the grass and bushes and things I put down, because a lot of the ones I find in the game are very bright, and I felt like this would be quite dark colours, very dark, very heavy, rather than obviously bright green bushes. That just really wouldn't fit the vibe. And they still are a little bit bright, some of the bushes and things, but I mean, obviously Sims sort of like limitations. But yeah, so definitely very like heavy dark colours, and I really wanted to like get that in the lot, even though obviously around it in Henford-on-Bagley it's quite bright. I wanted to make sure the lot looked right. So I'm really hoping that you guys like it and it kind of works. But yeah, so we are finally on the inside now, and you'll see that stone on the wall, stone on the floor. I'm keeping it very traditional. The one thing though actually about this build, which I am denied about doing, and looking at it now I feel like I maybe should have done it, is a lot of the really traditional black houses I saw have rounded corners, so they're not like, so like if the rectangular corners, like they would be rounded off, but only very slightly. Now obviously on The Sims we can do rounded walls, but I always feel like they're very round, right? And obviously there's a limitation on how big your curves can be, and you can't get them really small, and I feel like they needed to be really small. I tried doing it, had a look at what it would look like, and it was just very round. So I did opt for the just like your standard, you know, like corner rather than a curved corner. And yeah, so it's not like fully traditional. I did see some like this, like I said before, like they seem to go through different stages. So like some, you know, like I said, some had chimneys, some more newer ones had chimneys, and some of the newer ones also had more corners and things like that. So it's a little bit of a mix of like the ones I've seen online, just obviously with the limitations of The Sims, of which one, of how I could make it. So yeah, but you'll see that the chimney has now disappeared. And the inside again is just very dark. I was just trying to use lots of things which I feel like could have been here for a really long time. And yeah, so, and obviously because I am doing off the grid, you'll see sometimes I feel like the items you can use off the grid are a little bit strange. Like the bath is a little bit strange. It does work though, to be fair, for this build, because obviously it looks like a very old bath. And I do put an actual stove in, so an oven, the oven that can be off the grid. Obviously they would have cooked food just like on the fire, like I said before, which I've put in the middle, which does change. I do really like this one I've put down from, I think it's from the Island Living Pack. I think it really works like aesthetically. But then I remember there's that one from, it might be from the Get Famous packs. I think it's kind of like a prop, you know? It's a prop item almost for like when you're an actor on the stage and things. that comes with like a little fire and it's got a little pot over it. I thought that was really sweet because it looks like they're like cooking food, you know. So I do end up putting that one, but that's kind of just decoration. You kind of imagine that's where they would have made the food, but actually your Sims can use a real oven, so that's great. Although it is still off the grid, so obviously it is a bit like funky still, isn't it? You can only do so much. And then this little side area is where I thought the animals could live. Now, I don't know how this would have looked. I feel like I've made a kind of mini stable kind of vibe, and it might have been not quite like this in sort of like, or how they were really. But I just felt like this was quite a good way of kind of giving the idea of where the animals would have lived in The Sims. Kind of a nice way of doing it. So that's what that little area is. But yeah, so yeah, this is a very different build. Like I said, this is very different. I don't think I've ever made anything like this before. And I've made a lot of builds over the many years I've played Sims. But yeah, this is definitely a first. But I did enjoy putting the toilet outside. I don't know, it was giving me like, I don't know, can you imagine like going out to the toilet in the dark? Especially like, because I feel like it would be really, really, really dark. And there wouldn't be like, obviously, I mean, on here there's like no lights, like proper lights, because it's off the grid. So they'd have to go out with a little lantern, I suppose, or a little candle to find the toilet in the middle of the night. Yeah, that I did think, yeah, that would be pretty cold. Especially if it was raining as well. But hey, I mean, I imagine that's what they did. So there we are. And then this is the little outer building, like I said, that I feel like has been made more recently. And it's just to store things. I did think about, because when I first built it, I thought, oh, this could be like a little animal shed. But then I was like, no, wait, the animals can live inside. And then obviously also there's the animals, the real animal house, or the real Sims animal house out in the little farm. And I thought that's quite a lot of animal houses. So I was like, no, this can be a little store cupboard. I feel like where they store a lot of stuff. But also, like I said, put a few gameplay items in there so you can do your crafting, the like wood workbench, flower arranging, things that are off the grid, and maybe even ways that your Sim makes money. Because I assume they would use the farming and like, I mean, in The Sims in this case, you could do farming and also like flower arranging or the wooden crafts, like sculptures, as your way of earning money. I feel like that's kind of, it'd all be kind of, they wouldn't work for someone else. Everything would be in this little world they have, right? So you'd work on the farm and you'd live here, and yeah, that's just kind of how you'd do your day. So that's what I kind of wanted to get, because I felt like you could kind of do that on The Sims. You could kind of live that life if you wanted to, or have your Sim live that life. So that's kind of the vibes we were going for. But yeah, so I hope you all enjoyed this. I know it's a little different. I know that perhaps some of you out there probably haven't heard of one either. I know I hadn't, but it's always nice to see something different and just, yeah, build something a little bit different too. So I will leave you now with some screenshots and see you in the next one. Bye.